Parstiche is a very small version of Part in Cornwall. The real station has a platform-mounted signal box at the west end, and I wished to model a representation of it. The Gaugemaster Fordhampton Kit seemed to be a good starting point, and as I enjoy kit bashing, one was purchased. The parts for the signal box as provided in the kit. They come in 3 colours: grey for the roof and base, cream for the wood infills, and green for everything else. The window frames are moulded in green, in one piece with the walls. This undoubtedly makes the kit easier to assemble, but it does mean that if you want your box to look like the inset picture, some very careful white painting will be required. There is some thin glazing included, and the green object at the top right of the picture represents the control desk or lever frame. The sides and ends of the kit as supplied. The material the kit is made from is a bit too rubbery for my liking and is not as cleanly cast as in other kits I have made. More importantly, there are moulding marks all over the visible parts of the model which need to be removed. For some reason, the marks are indented into the frames of the signal box, and if not filed smooth, will rather spoil the appearance of the finished model. As I mentioned earlier, I require a platform-mounted signal box for Parstiche, so the lower sections of the kit were sawn off. The door and its side panel was cut from the lower discarded end section and glued in its new place. This looks a little rough at this stage, a combination of rubbery plastic and my lack of modelling skills. Still, hopefully it will be improved by painting later. The green frames have now been filed as smooth as possible, although the plastic doesn't take a file too well. The cream planking sections were then attached. The fit is not too precise, but the odd-shaped cream infill to the right of the door is another example of my poor bodgering skills. The sides and ends were then primed with white Halford's rattle can primer. A closer view of part of a primed side. This shows that the mould marks haven't quite disappeared yet, but I hope they won't notice on the finished model. My layout is set in around 1979, by which time most signal boxes had been painted in an all-over engineer's grey. The window and door frames, however, were painted white. A very light grey was therefore applied to the appropriate areas, and the window frames left in their white primed state. Like most station buildings in the 1970s, signal boxes were not cleaned or repainted very often, and often looked a bit grubby. Weathering was therefore applied to make my box look more realistic. A thin coat of dark grey mixed with a touch of light brown was then plastered all over the model and allowed to become touch dry. Then most of it was removed using a cotton bud moistened with thinners, leaving behind a layer of dirt, particularly in the crevices and joins. Doors seemed to be painted in a variety of colours in the 1970s, but a picture I found online showed that at some time the door in the power signal box had been painted yellow. I should have painted it before I applied the weathering, but better late than never. Once painted and weathered, it rather looks the part. The 4 sides were then assembled together and the signal box was beginning to look a little like the real thing. It should be said that the real box at Par is rather longer than my version, but then the real station at Par is rather longer than my version as well. So proportionally, my model is about the right length. The windows were glazed, but I didn't use the glazing supplied with the kit as it was too thin and flexible. I used clear plasticard instead. A low brick-built base was constructed from some Wills brick sheets. The two ends were not joined together at this stage, as the gap between them is to accommodate a window. The base pieces were painted and mortar courses added. Full details of the method can be found in my video showing the construction of another signal box, this time a ratio kit. A floor was cut out from 1.5mm plasticard and painted grey. The odd shape of this floor is to allow a cutout to fit where I have added the end door. The box, base and floor were all glued together and put to one side whilst I concentrated on the interior. I deliberated for a long time over whether to fit out the interior of the box, but in the end decided that with so many windows its omission would be obvious. This was a decision I have never regretted, although it did add much more time to the construction of the box. I purchased the excellent ratio kit and painted and assembled it as per their instructions. Being a bit of an anorak here, I even found a copy of the track diagram at the real Par station. This was copied and reduced in size to fit a space on the wall of my box. It is so small that it's actually difficult to make out what it is, but I know it's there. The next question was whether the lever frame should be at the front of the box or at the rear. Most real-life boxes had the levers at the front, but not all of them. I belong to a model railway forum, RM Web, and my question was swiftly answered. The lever frame at Par faces the front, so that was where I put it. The buildings on my layout are all removable, so I can easily ring the changes when the mood takes me. There is an oblong hole at the end of platforms 2 and 3, where the running in board for my original layout, haven't a clue, is situated. For Parstiche, this is where the signal box will be located. A base for the signal box was made from 1.5mm plasticard and painted grey to match the platform's surface. An oblong box was constructed and glued to the underside of the base to enable the signal box always to be located in the right spot. The base is not fixed to the platform, so it can be removed at any time. A set of steps was needed to lead down from the signal box to the platform. I cheated here and cut down some steps from an old Hornby signal box. The idea was to save time and save me the fiddle of making steps from scratch. In the end, it wasn't as easy as I'd thought and probably took longer than scratch building. Oh well. You live and learn. The roof, as supplied in the kit, is a one-piece moulding in light grey. It seemed fine and fitted the main body of the signal box well, so that all was needed was to paint it in a darker shade of grey. A seated signalman was glued to the armchair. The chimneys were fitted to the roof and the roof glued to the body of the box. Downpipes, as supplied in the kit, were added to the gutters in appropriate places and the box was finished. There was a fair amount of fettling and filing needed to get to this stage, and the build was not as easy as other kits I've constructed. However, despite this and despite my misgivings about the quality of the kit, I think the finished product looks okay and is a fair representation of the real thing. And that, after all, was what I was after. And finally, here is the box installed at the western end of platforms 2 and 3 on Parstiche Station. I hope you've enjoyed this simple kit bash. But that's all for now, so see you next time.